The wolf at the door. Memory is not a mirror. It is a map. A map burned, redrawn, and buried again. But even scorched lines can still guide you home. Claire had spent years running from shadows with no names, patching cracks with silence, mistaking numbness for healing. Now the shadows had names. Now the cracks had voices. And what broke in her had not vanished. It had simply sharpened. The past could not be erased. But it could be rewritten. The wolf was no longer at the door. The wolf was inside the house. And this time, Claire wasn't running. Before we dive into the part 2 of this thrilling story, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Claire Everett was 9 years old the summer she wandered alone into her mother's studio on a Wednesday afternoon, a day when the sky stretched too blue and the cicadas buzzed so thickly it vibrated in her teeth. It had rained early that morning, a brief Midwest downpour that left the garden beds soggy and the grass sharp with petrichor. Her mother had retreated after breakfast to the detached carriage house at the back of the yard, the building she called her atelier, with its faded green door and tall windows that caught the western light. Claire wasn't supposed to go inside when the red scarf was tied around the knob, her mother's universal, "do not disturb" signal. But today no scarf fluttered. So Claire crept across the lawn barefoot, grass blades slicing cool between her toes. The wooden threshold of the studio stuck slightly as she pushed it open, the air inside thick and humid, heavy with the iron-sweet tang of wet clay vinegar and something else older, kiln ash dust motes time. Her mother's studio had always felt older than the house itself. Timeless. Dust-dulled glass jars lined oak shelves, filled with powdered pigments, cobalt, sienna, ochre. The long work table stretched under the bay window, cluttered with wire armatures, drying busts, clay-smudged tools. And at the center, a tall turntable where, most days, Marian Everett sculpted her signature porcelain masks. Claire crept closer, heart thudding gently but insistently. Her mother wasn't here, perhaps in the garden? Or inside making lunch. Her small fingers trailed along the edge of the workbench, the cool smoothness of wooden carving knives and half-used sponges grounding her. Safe. Familiar. Then her gaze caught something different. Tucked beneath the main table, obscured behind a stack of crates and unopened plaster bags, sat an old wooden trunk. Unlabeled. Unadorned. Closed with a rusting brass latch, not locked, only fastened. Claire's chest tightened, curiosity mixing sharp with trepidation. She crouched, wedging her body between the crates and eased the latch open. The hinges creaked faintly, ancient and arthritic. Inside, wrapped in faded muslin sheets and yellowed newspaper, were sculptures she had never seen before. Her breath caught. These were not the elegant masks her mother displayed at gallery shows. The smooth porcelain faces with arched brows and serene expressions, always eyeless, sockets deliberately hollowed as artistic signature. No, these were rougher, raw. Claire peeled away brittle paper from the nearest form, her fingers trembling faintly despite the warm afternoon. A bust emerged, not fired porcelain but coarse red clay, still unfinished, cracks spiderwebbing its jaw. It was a child's face. Rounded cheeks. Small parted lips. Tears carved in jagged rivulets down both cheeks, staining the clay in hardened lines. And the eyes. Not hollow. Still shut. Clay lids fused crudely over the sockets, as though the sculptor's hands had smashed them closed mid-formation. Permanent blindness pressed into the child's expression. Claire's stomach lurched queasily. Her palms slicked with sweat. Her fingers darted to unwrap a second form, a smaller sculpture, only a fragmented face. This one was more abstract. Jagged shards of porcelain fused into something mask-like but distorted. The eye holes bled rivulets of carved cracks, spidering out like fractures in glass. Her breath came sharp now, shallow. The cicadas outside droned louder. Her ribs ached faintly. Her skin crawled. Then she saw, at the very bottom of the trunk, a thin sketchbook tucked into the lining. Claire hesitated, pulse hammering wildly, then lifted it free. The cover was soft, worn leather. Faintly embossed initials, her mother's. She opened it to the first page. Rough charcoal sketches. Masked figures with scratched-out eyes. Childlike forms hunched inside boxes, their rib cages marked with tally strokes. Over and over, figures counting ribs on tiny torsos. Her mouth went dry. Her chest squeezed. And then at the bottom corner of one page in hurried cursive that spiraled off the line. If I make them blind, they can't see what happens. If I sculpt it shut, no one can make me look again. Claire dropped the sketchbook. It hit the studio floor with a dull slap. The studio door creaked. Her mother's silhouette framed the bright afternoon outside. Claire. Her tone sharp, surprise shading quickly into wariness. Claire froze, spine stiff, lips parted. Marian's gaze swept the room, locking instantly on the open trunk, the scattered sculptures, the fallen sketchbook. Silence thickened like molasses. Slowly, Marian crossed the room, her footfalls precise but heavier than usual, boots sinking into the old pine floorboards. Her face, when she crouched beside Claire, was pale but hard. Not fearful, resigned. "I told you not to touch my private things," she said quietly. What is this?" Claire stammered. Her small hand gestured helplessly at the blindfolded bust. Her voice cracked. Her mother's lips pressed thin, bloodless. "They're old pieces," Marian said curtly. "I was experimenting with form and symbolism. It doesn't concern you. But they're—" Claire's breath hitched, tears threatening now, thick and hot. "They're all children. Crying. Hiding. You wrote." Her mother's jaw clenched visibly. The muscle along her temple ticked. "I wrote nonsense," she snapped. "Things I was working through privately. Artists use metaphor. You're too young to understand." Her tone softened abruptly, like cool lacquer poured quickly over a crack. "You're sensitive, Claire. Always were. You're reading too much into things. Best you forget about this." Marian knelt gracefully, gathering the sculptures swiftly but carefully, cradling them against her apron, and deposited them back into the trunk. Her movements were deft, but Claire didn't miss the faint tremor in her fingertips. Her mother fastened the latch hard. Then, locking her gray gaze on Claire's. "Some things are best left unseen, darling," she said gently but firmly. "For your own good. For everyone's." Claire swallowed hard. Her ribs ached sharply now, a phantom band cinching tighter. Her mother rose fluidly, brushed dust from her skirt, and walked toward the kiln at the back wall. By the time Claire scrambled to her feet, blinking back confused tears, she heard the kiln ignite with a hollow roar. The hidden sculptures were gone by nightfall. Back in the present day, Claire Everett sat curled in the corner of her apartment couch, blanket twisted loosely around her waist. The evening light filtered soft amber through her curtains. Her sketchbook lay open on her lap, but for the first time in hours, her pencil rested motionless. Her throat was dry. Her temples throbbed. Her chest felt hollowed out, but her pulse beat steady beneath her skin. She had remembered it all now. The day she found the sculptures, the blind crying child, the sketchbook confessions. Her mother's voice. Some things are best left unseen. But now Claire saw clearly. Marian Everett hadn't merely been complicit in silence. She had been a child once too, sculpting her own blindness in clay, entombing pain under porcelain and powdered lavender. It didn't excuse her. But it explained legacy. Generational fractures passed down through unspoken rules and fragile masks. Claire exhaled slowly, her breath long and even. She lifted her pencil, and for the first time in weeks her hand moved steadily, lines clean and unshaken. She sketched a small clay bust, its eyelids half open now. No longer sealed shut. No longer blind. When she finished, she wrote below it in careful script. "I see it now. And I don't have to pass it on." Her ribs still ached faintly. But her breath flowed freely. The early autumn air sharpened as Claire Everett climbed the familiar sandstone steps leading to Dr. Naomi Weiss's office. It was nearly twilight, that soft bruised hour when the sky pooled violet and amber between the slender shoulders of downtown Chicago's old brownstones. The air hummed faintly with distant sirens, scattered honks, and the low static of evening traffic. Claire's boots scuffed lightly on the worn slate landing. The door's brass handle was cool under her fingers. Above it, the frosted glass etched simply. Naomi Weiss, Ph.D. Psychotherapy and Somatic Integration. Her chest rose slow on an inhale, steadier than it had been in weeks. Still tight. Still tentative. But steady. Inside, the waiting room glowed soft amber from standing lamps, the scent of sandalwood lingering faintly beneath the hum of muted jazz from a corner speaker. The shelves still bore their mismatched books, half psychology texts, half battered novels. they familiar. Claire didn't sit this time. Instead, as soon as the interior door clicked open and Dr. Weiss emerged, warm wool cardigan draped over her navy blouse, silver curls loose around her sharp but kind face, Claire met her gaze with something almost anchored. "Claire," Dr. Weiss greeted, her voice even. Calm ripples across still water. "Come in." Claire sank into the high-backed armchair, knees drawing unconsciously toward her chest before she caught herself and slowly uncoiled. Her palms rested flat against her thighs. "Grounded," Dr. Weiss observed quietly, jotting a quick note on her leather pad before setting it aside. "You seem a little different today," she offered gently. "Clearer." Her eyes searched Claire's face carefully but without pressure. Claire exhaled. Her throat flexed dryly. "I remembered something," she said finally. Her voice didn't tremble. Dr. Weiss nodded once. An invitation without interruption. Claire swallowed. The words took shape, slow but firm, over the next several minutes. The studio. The hidden sculptures. The child's blindfolded bust. Her mother's hurried deflections. "If I make them blind, they can't see what happens." She spoke evenly, her breath measured between sentences, her shoulders still soft but square. Dr. Weiss listened intently, only interjecting occasionally. "Take your time. Notice where you feel that in your body as you recall it. Breathe into it and tell me where it shifts." By the time Claire described the sketchbook confession and her mother's phrase, "Some things are best left unseen," her jaw ached faintly but her voice held steady. She sat back finally, blinking slowly, breath fluttering. Dr. Weiss folded her hands. "Claire," she said gently, "can you feel into your ribcage for a moment? Let's return to the somatic landscape together." Claire nodded, closed her eyes briefly, and allowed her awareness to drop into her torso. For the first time in months, the tight ache across her ribs didn't spike wildly. It throbbed faintly but not suffocating. "I can feel it," she murmured. "Like loosened tension. Still there but not coiled so tight." Dr. Weiss smiled softly. "Your nervous system is beginning to learn the difference between then and now." Pause. "Can I share a reflection?" Claire met her gaze squarely. "Yes." Dr. Weiss leaned forward slightly, voice low but certain. "Your mother didn't just teach you silence, Claire. She modeled blindness as survival. She learned that not seeing, even sculpting it physically, was the only way she could endure her own history." Claire's breath caught shallowly but she didn't flinch. She buried pain into form. Into art. Into masks and blindfolded busts, Dr. Weiss continued evenly. "And when you were born, without words, she taught you the same unspoken language. Don't look. Don't ask. Don't feel. Don't name it." Claire's lips parted faintly. A low tremor slid through her diaphragm. Her fingers twitched faintly on her knees. "But here's the critical distinction," Dr. Weiss said softly but firmly. "Your mother survived, Claire. But survival is not healing. And survival does not absolve harm passed down." Her eyes sharpened fractionally, precise but compassionate. "Survival can excuse understanding," she said. "But it does not excuse silence that breeds more wounding." Claire's throat constricted, tears pricking sharply. She inhaled raggedly, then exhaled slow. Measured. Dr. Weiss let the space hold. Then her voice gentled again. "Your clarity now, Claire, is recognizing both truths. Your mother's methods were her own scarred armor, not malice. But it also cost you dearly. Fractured you. It left bruises no one saw. And you don't have to repeat her silence." Claire's lips quivered. Her fingers flexed into fists, then released slowly. Her breath deepened. Dr. Weiss reached quietly to her side table and retrieved something small, a palm-sized piece of clay wrapped in wax paper. "Before you leave today," she said gently, "I want to offer you this. A practice for the week." Claire accepted it carefully, the clay cool and pliant between her fingertips. "I'd like you to shape something small," Dr. Weiss continued. "Anything. But here's the only rule. The eyes must remain open." Claire's breath wavered. Her lips parted around a thin, almost incredulous smile. "Break the pattern," Dr. Weiss said simply. Claire closed her fingers around the clay. When she left the office that evening, the air was cooler, crisp leaves whispering along the pavement. Her ribs didn't ache. In her coat pocket, the clay nestled warm against her palm. A child sculpted blind. A woman sculpting site. Claire Everett sat cross-legged on her apartment's hardwood floor, the soft late-afternoon light slanting amber across the room. Around her, scattered sheets of sketches, inked pages and bound comic manuscripts spooled outward like spokes of a quiet wheel. Her fingers moved steadily, gathering, sorting. Every motion deliberate. In front of her rested a sturdy wooden box, the kind Daniel had once used to store surgical texts, its brass latches polished clean now under her careful work. She selected the final item, a thick cloth-bound volume, matte black cover unadorned except for the embossed title in silver ink. The Wolf at the Table. By Claire Everett. The dedication page still fluttered faintly from where she'd taped it in hours earlier. For the girl who survived. For the woman who remembered. Her thumb traced the words slowly. Then, just as deliberately, she lifted the cover and turned to the final page. The illustrations spread vivid under her steady hand. A young girl stood in a clearing, her dark curls wild, her eyes drawn wide and unflinching. Beside her, towering but calm, sat the wolf, Mr. Scratch, rendered no longer monstrous but majestic, his fur textured with careful crosshatch lines, amber eyes soft and forward-facing. The girl's hand rested on his thick ruff, gentle but firm. Neither looked behind them. Claire's breath flowed out in a long, even stream. She closed the volume gently, set it atop the stack within the box and latched it shut. No note. No explanations. The comics would speak clearly enough. Claire's boots struck softly against the cracked walkway as she approached her childhood home. The pale blue siding, weathered and sun-bleached, peeled faintly near the porch. The ceramic wind chimes tinkled faintly in the late September wind. The front door was slightly ajar. Inside, the familiar scent of clay dust and lavender soap ghosted faintly through the dim hall. The studio light flickered faintly under the cracked door to the right. Claire knocked once on the doorframe, her voice quiet but clear. "Mom." Her mother, Eleanor Everett, sat at her wide oak workbench, a familiar tableau. Her thin fingers, flecked with white slip, curved gently around a half-finished bust. Today the sculpture was of a woman, serene, elegant cheekbones, and as always no eyes. Eleanor looked up slowly. Her blonde gray hair was twisted into its usual soft knot, strands loose around her sharp cheekbones. She wore her usual faded chambray apron dusted in pale streaks. "Claire," she said evenly, her voice soft but guarded. "I wasn't expecting you." Claire crossed the threshold slowly, setting the wooden box carefully on the center table halfway between them. "He did things to me too. When I was young." Her eyes flicked downward, face pale. "I learned to forget. It was the only way. I thought, if I didn't see it, if I didn't name it, it would go away." Her throat convulsed dryly. "I didn't know how to stop it, Claire. I didn't know how to save you. So I tried to make you forget too." Claire's breath caught faintly. But she didn't drop her gaze. After a long pause, her mother's chin lifted slowly, her gray eyes sharp and glassy. "And we don't talk about such things in this family," Eleanor finished quietly. "We are Everetts. We endure. We don't air dirty laundry. It's how I survived. It's how my mother survived before me." Her fingers lifted faintly as if to touch Claire's sleeve, but fell short. "I only wanted to protect you the only way I knew." The words landed, brittle, hollow. Not untrue, but not enough. Claire's jaw flexed once. Her voice, when it emerged, was clear and calm. "I understand that you didn't know how, Mom," she said softly. "I understand you were broken too. But I needed you to see me. And you didn't." Her mother blinked hard, her lower lip quivering sharply. Claire stepped back from the table slowly. "I'm not staying in the blindness," she said evenly. "I broke the pattern. I remember now. And I won't carry your silence anymore." Her mother's breath stuttered faintly, but she didn't speak. Her gaze dropped to the bust cradled in her palms. Claire set her palm flat atop the wooden box. "I'm leaving this here for you," she said gently. "It's my story. If you ever want to see what truth looks like, eyes wide open, you'll have it." Her mother's gaze flicked briefly to it, then back to Claire's face. A beat of silence stretched. "I came to talk," Claire said. Her voice was calm, no tremor. "One last time." Eleanor's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "I don't think there's—" "Please," Claire interjected gently but firmly. "No deflections today. Just honesty." Her mother's jaw flexed. A shallow breath. What do you want to know? Claire inhaled slowly, her ribs expanding fluidly. Dr. Weiss's breathing anchor steady in her muscle memory now. She met her mother's gaze directly. I want you to tell me why, she said softly. Why you turned away. Why you didn't stop him. Why you taught me to stay silent. Eleanor's fingers twitched faintly on the bust's curve. A thin crack traced down the sculpture's cheek, unnoticed or ignored. I don't know what you mean, her mother whispered. Claire said nothing. She didn't press. She waited. Eleanor's lips parted, trembled faintly, and then pursed closed. After a long beat, her shoulders sagged minutely. Your grandfather, Eleanor murmured finally. Her voice cracked raw around the name. She didn't wait for a reply. Her boots thudded softly as she turned and crossed the threshold. The late autumn light spilled bright gold through the front porch as she stepped outside. Behind her, inside the dim studio, the ceramic bust slipped faintly on the workbench. A soft crack echoed as a fragment, the blank eye plate, fell and shattered against the concrete floor. Claire didn't look back. That night, Claire sat in her studio under the amber glow of her desk lamp. The soft block of clay from Dr. Weiss sat pliant in her palms. Her fingers moved steadily, deftly. No hesitations now. When she finished, the sculpture fit neatly in her cupped hands. A small wolf's head, eyes wide open, amber marbled beads pressed carefully into the sockets. Her breath flowed steady. The weight in her chest had shifted, no longer sharp ache. A deep, solid warmth settled through her ribcage. Her eyes lifted toward the window. Outside, the sky stretched velvet blue, no shadows lunging. The past had fractured, but she had set her own mosaic now. Claire sat in her usual chair, wide-seated, olive green, worn soft where hundreds of sessions had impressed human weight into its cushions. The office smelled faintly of bergamot and old books. Afternoon light filtered through the latticed windows, pooling golden on the Persian rug between them. Dr. Weiss sat across from her. Notebook closed. Pen untouched. Hands loosely folded in her lap. I went to see my mother last week, Claire said finally. Her voice emerged level, unhurried, unforced. Dr. Weiss gave the faintest nod, encouraging but neutral. Claire exhaled slowly, her fingers laced together on her knee. I didn't get an apology, or an admission that I needed. But I didn't expect it either. Her lips quirked faintly. I left her the comics. I'm not going back. Another pause. No heavy silence this time, just space. I keep thinking about that last illustration, Claire murmured. The one of the girl and the wolf. I don't think I drew it because I wanted to be rid of Mr. Scratch. I think I drew it because, her throat bobbed, because we survived together. Her eyes lifted, meeting Dr. Weiss's steady gaze. I think it's time to stop seeing him as the enemy. Dr. Weiss's lips curved softly. What makes you say that, Claire? Claire's breath steadied deeper now. Her ribs expanded without that familiar crush at the base of her sternum. I think I made him, she said simply. To hold the pain I couldn't name. To keep me safe when no one else could. Her voice didn't tremble. Dr. Weiss's eyes crinkled faintly at the corners. She uncrossed her legs, leaning forward slightly. Would you be open, she asked gently, to trying a guided visualization today? To meet him more directly with that understanding? Claire nodded. No hesitation. Dr. Weiss's voice guided her gently into breath. Steady, low, diaphragmatic. With each inhale, Claire pictured warm amber light gathering beneath her ribs. With each exhale, tension drifted from her shoulders, her throat, her jaw. Imagine yourself in a place where you feel both safe and curious, Dr. Weiss murmured softly. Where would that be? Claire's mind shaped the image easily now. A sun-dappled clearing encircled by tall birch trees whose white trunks gleamed gently in the afternoon light. Soft moss cushioned under her bare feet. Wind moved lazily, stirring the leaves overhead. And now, Dr. Weiss continued evenly, I want you to imagine Mr. Scratch approaching, not to harm but simply to be with you. Notice how he appears. Claire's breath deepened. Through the break in the trees he emerged, tall, powerful, but no longer the grotesque hybrid her earlier sketches had rendered. Now he stood as a great wolf, thick-furred and amber-eyed, broad-shouldered and lithe. His paws sunk softly into the moss, claws retracted. No bared teeth, His head bowed faintly in what seemed like deference, not dominance. Claire's heart didn't race. It stilled. I see him, she whispered. Good, Dr. Weiss replied calmly. What happens next? Claire took a step forward in her mind's eye, her bare feet firm on the mossy earth. The wolf, Mr. Scratch, lifted his gaze fully. His eyes met hers directly. Amber. Warm. Knowing. Claire knelt slowly in front of him. Her hand lifted, no tremor, and settled against the thick ruff of his neck. His breath puffed out steady and warm across her palm. Not hot, not rancid like old nightmares had told her. Alive. Present. You kept me alive, didn't you? Claire whispered softly in the visualization. Mr. Scratch dipped his massive head once in silent affirmation. I'm safe now, she said, her voice clear. His eyes blinked slowly, calm recognition. I don't need you to guard the door so fiercely anymore, she continued quietly. But I don't want you to go away either. Mr. Scratch sat back on his haunches, head still bowed faintly, not submissive but respectful. Balanced. Claire felt her chest loosen, her diaphragm moving easily now. I want to carry you differently now, she whispered. Not as my monster, but as part of me. In her mind's eye, she rose to her feet. And when her palm brushed against Mr. Scratch's fur once more, the thick pelt shimmered, soft amber light rippling outward. The wolf form dissolved, not violently but gently, and settled into her chest like glowing threads, weaving seamlessly into her ribcage, her spine, her shoulders. Her breath didn't hitch. It expanded, deep, sure, whole. When Claire opened her eyes, the office light seemed warmer. The weight in her sternum had shifted. Still present but not oppressive. She met Dr. Weiss's gaze across the room. That was different than I expected, Claire said quietly. Dr. Weiss's lips curved gently. I'd say you're different than you expected. Claire huffed the softest breath of humor. I always thought healing meant destroying him, Claire murmured, gaze distant but soft. But I think it was about honoring him. Honoring what my body, my mind did to survive. That part deserves to be seen, not shunned. Dr. Weiss nodded slowly. You are not broken, Claire, she said softly. You are a mosaic, stronger at the fractured places. The words landed deep, solid. Claire's throat bobbed once, but no tears surged. I think, she said after a long moment, I'm ready to make something new. Not just about what happened, but about what comes next. Dr. Weiss's smile deepened, quiet pride softening her usually measured features. I think you are too. Claire's breath moved steady beneath her ribs. Her spine rested tall against the back of the chair. The wolf wasn't gone. He was home, woven into her marrow, no longer shadowed. Not a monster. A protector finally recognized and welcomed. Claire stood in her studio, early morning light unfurling across the broad oak drafting table. The paper sat pristine, thick and toothy beneath her fingertips, Arch's cold press untouched. Her micron pens were lined meticulously beside her. Her Copic grays arranged from warmest to coldest hue. For the first time in years, her hand didn't tremble above a blank sheet. She no longer drew to bleed out. She drew to name. Her studio windows stood open, spring wind stirring faintly against the pale linen curtains. The scent of rain on concrete mixed subtly with lavender, not cloying this time. Neutral. Clean. Present. Her phone buzzed lightly on the windowsill. A text from Daniel. Daniel, I'm at rounds. But thinking of you. So proud of you today. I'll see you tonight, wolf face. Her lips tugged gently. Daniel had been steady. Steady when she collapsed, steady when she clawed at the seams of memory, steady when she finally rose from it all. She slid the phone into her pocket and sat. Before her sat the title page draft. The Wolf at the Table. By Claire Everett. Her own name. Not the old pseudonym. Not masked. Her thumb grazed the edge of her fine liner. She inhaled, deep, deliberate, and began the first line. The opening panel emerged smoothly beneath her hands. A 9-year-old girl sat cross-legged on a worn hardwood floor, knees scabbed, shoulders narrow beneath a faded striped t-shirt. Around her, splintered ribs of an attic door. But instead of looming or ominous, sunlight poured through the cracks, soft and amber. Across from her sat the wolf, large, fur thick and dappled with silver. His amber eyes met the child's, calm, direct, equal. There was no leering, no grotesque hybrid body as she'd once drawn him. Now he sat easily beside the girl, broad paws resting, ears pricked attentively. In the next spread, the girl lifted her hand, small bandaged knuckles, and rested her palm against the wolf's ruff. Instead of disappearing into him, her fingers sank into fur warm and soft, textured richly in hatch-marked ink. Page by page she shaped the sequence. The child walking forward, no longer counting ribs but stretching upright, gaze lifted. The wolf walking beside her, always just at her shoulder, not dragging, not leading but matching her stride. A scene of the two seated at a table together, simple wooden planks beneath an open sky. The child offered a cracked ceramic cup to the wolf. He bowed his head, accepting it delicately between his jaws. The table was symbolic, Claire knew, the place of communion, of ownership over one's own story. The hours stretched long and fluid. Her hand moved in confident sweeps, fine liner bleeding black certainty into white expanse. The ache at her wrists, once the phantom bruises, was absent now. Instead her joints moved with quiet precision. Her mind didn't scatter. Instead of flashbacks fracturing her attention, she wrote a sustained focus. The wolf at the table. The child beside him. Both gazing steadily forward, not into darkness but toward horizon light. Between panels Claire paused, thumb and forefinger smudged faintly with graphite as she shaded depth into the wolf's thick fur. Her reflection surfaced, clear but not flooding. Mr. Scratch was my sentinel, she thought plainly. He carried what I couldn't speak. I don't want to exile him now. I want to give him a seat at the table of my life, where we can look ahead together, not circle back endlessly. She inked the final chapter spread. Adult Claire, her current self, sat at the wooden table. No longer gaunt, no shadows under her eyes. Her posture upright but soft, a faint smile at the corners of her mouth. Beside her sat the wolf, now more gray around the muzzle, eyes wise and gentle. His broad head rested comfortably on the tabletop, close to her hand. In the background, faint line work suggested an open door no longer locked. Sunlight streamed in. And in deliberate, crisp lettering she inked. I name the wolf now. I call him Survivor. It was dusk when Claire sat back, flexing her fingers. The final inkwash had dried clean and matte. The graphic novel manuscript, 162 pages, stacked neatly, edges squared. The title page sat atop. The Wolf at the Table, by Claire Everett. She slid the manuscript into a manila envelope, smoothing the flap down firmly. On the dedication page in clean serif. For the girl who survived. For the woman who remembered. That evening, Daniel returned home to find her in the living room, manuscript laid reverently on the coffee table. His brows lifted, gaze tender and alert. You finished it. Claire's lips curved slowly. I did. He sat beside her, resting his hand warmly against hers. I'm publishing it under my own name, she said softly. No masks. No pseudonyms. I'm ready. His hand squeezed hers gently. I can't wait to read it, he said simply. His eyes gleamed, not with pity but with pride. Later that week she handed a printed galley copy to Dr. Weiss at session. Dr. Weiss cradled it gently in her palms, expression profoundly still. Claire's chest felt neither hollow nor tight. It felt whole. The walls of Dr. Weiss's office were the same. The quiet, steady hum of the air conditioner flickered softly in the background. The scent of wood polish lingered as always in the air. The dim lighting, the same cool tones of gray and cream that Claire had come to recognize with her body as much as her mind. But today there was a shift. Claire settled into the chair, the familiar red leather of the therapist's couch cradling her like an old friend. Her fingers lightly rested on her lap, a new sort of ease in them. No more tension. No more need to fight the flow of time. She hadn't worn her jacket. For the first time in a long while she felt no need to shield herself. Her body open. Present. The shadows that once loomed over her movements were finally gone. It wasn't that they disappeared completely. She had absorbed them, woven them into her skin. Instead of looming threats, her past was now a mosaic of brokenness, survival and strength. The door clicked softly and Dr. Weiss entered the room, her expression as calm and warm as ever. Her eyes held a quiet recognition. Claire, she greeted softly as though this was the most natural thing in the world. She carried the same well-worn notepad, but it had become more symbolic than functional in their last few sessions. Claire smiled faintly in return, nodding her head. "I'm ready," Claire said. "This is it, right?" Dr. Weiss took a seat across from her, setting the notepad gently on the table. She leaned forward slightly, folding her hands in her lap. "It is," she said, her voice measured and soothing. "This is the final session. But there's no rush. Take your time." For a long moment they simply sat in silence, the hum of the room the only sound. Claire's mind, usually a whirlpool of fragmented thoughts, now felt like a river. "Come," ordered. She could think clearly without the suffocating weight of her memories flooding in uncontrollably. The last few years had been a journey of unfolding. Each therapy session had been a step. Each drawing, a declaration of healing. Each confrontation, whether with her mother or with her own body, had been a moment of reclamation. But now in this room there was no need for more fragments. No need for pieces of herself to be broken open again. "I don't need to tell you anything new," Claire said, her voice low but confident. "I've done it. I've remembered everything." Dr. Weiss gave a gentle nod. "I think you've always known, Claire. You just needed to listen. To the body. To the memories that had been silenced for so long." Claire paused, her fingers touching the edge of the couch, but not nervously. This wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. "I've let the wolf in," she said quietly. "And I've learned to listen to him. He's been with me my whole life. He was never an enemy." Dr. Weiss gave her a small, thoughtful smile. "You've integrated him. The wolf was never meant to be the monster. He was your protector, the part of you that kept you alive when your soul didn't know how to stay whole." Claire's breath hitched, but it wasn't panic. It was understanding, full and true. The wolf hadn't been a monster at all. He had been the mosaic of her survival. The part of her that helped her stay. "I think I've learned that," Claire said softly. "He wasn't the monster. But I was terrified of him for so long because he reminded me of all the things I couldn't face. All the things I thought would destroy me." Dr. Weiss nodded slowly, her eyes softening. "It's a hard truth to face, Claire. The things that save us can often feel like they might destroy us. Because they remind us of the things we tried so hard to forget." Claire looked down at her hands, steady still. No more tremors. No more fear of breaking. She had written a comic. She had named the wolf. She had healed step by step. And now she was sitting here, complete. "I don't feel broken anymore," she said softly. "I feel like the parts of me that were shattered have finally come together. Not perfect. Not whole in the way I thought. But something stronger. More real." Dr. Weiss looked at her with quiet approval. "That's exactly it. It's not the absence of fracture, Claire. It's the strength in the fracture. You're stronger at the broken places. You always were." Dr. Weiss reached over and gently slid the notepad toward Claire. It was her final gift, the culmination of everything Claire had been working toward. The cover was simple but familiar. A sketch of a wolf in profile, drawn softly but with depth. No eyes scratched out. Only the still, waiting presence of the wolf. Inside the notebook were the final few pages of their therapy transcripts. The last word written in the session. "Would you like to read it aloud, Claire?" Dr. Weiss asked gently, her voice warm. Claire opened the notebook, the pages feeling like they had always belonged to her. She had written these words once, in fragments, in moments of panic and confusion. But now they felt like truth. She began to read aloud. "Dr. Weiss, where does it hurt, Claire? Claire, it's not the bruises. It's not the scratches. It's the places where I couldn't breathe. Where I couldn't remember. Dr. Weiss, but you've remembered. And now you breathe. What is it like to feel all that without the fear? Claire, it's like, I can finally see what was broken and still call it mine. I can finally see it all without breaking." Claire closed the notebook softly. The words, once so distant and unclear, now felt like an echo of her own journey. Her journey was finished. It was her final step forward. She handed the notebook back to Dr. Weiss. "I think that's everything." Dr. Weiss smiled, her eyes full of pride. "No, Claire. That's everything you needed to see. Now the world gets to see it too." As Claire rose to leave, Dr. Weiss stood with her, extending her hand. "You're ready, Claire," she said, her voice rich with certainty. Claire clasped Dr. Weiss's hand firmly, feeling the strength in it. Her own strength. I think I always was, Claire said with quiet pride. And with that she walked out of the room. Not into the past. Not into the fragments. But into the light of survival, wholeness, and the future. The gentle hum of the printer filled the room as Claire sat at her desk, her fingers resting lightly on the cover page of the graphic novel. The Wolf at the Table. A title that had been years in the making, years spent writing, drawing, and living through the darkness she had long tried to forget. The manuscript was now bound, and the first official copy of the book lay in front of her like a symbol of everything she had fought through. Her hands shook just slightly, an echo of old habits, but the tremor wasn't born from fear this time. It was something else. A nervous energy, a flicker of vulnerability that had always accompanied new beginnings. This was it. The culmination of her journey. The beginning of a new chapter. She exhaled slowly and turned the page to the dedication. The words she had written there were simple, but they had been carefully chosen. They held everything she needed to say, all the things she had never been able to say before. The things that had been buried too deep for too long. For the girl who survived. For the woman who remembered. Claire sat back, her eyes lingering on the words. She hadn't realized until this moment how much the act of writing those words would mean to her. The girl who survived. That young version of herself who had never truly believed she could make it out. She had lived through it all even when it felt impossible. And now she was the woman who remembered. The woman who understood the full weight of the past but wasn't afraid to hold it. The warmth of a slow, quiet smile crept across her face. She wasn't broken. Not anymore. She had been a mosaic, a collection of fragments and shards, yes, but each piece had its place, each crack had made her stronger. The book wasn't just her survival story, it was her declaration. A story of resilience, of reclaiming power, and of embracing everything that had made her whole despite the fractures. A few weeks later, Claire stood at a podium in front of a crowd. The buzz of conversations around her filled the space, mingling with the faint sound of clinking glasses and footsteps echoing against the floor. It was the night of her book launch. The room was filled with friends, colleagues, and critics, people who had followed her work for years, who had seen only the violent surrealist comics she created under a male pseudonym. Tonight they would meet the real Claire Everett. They would see her truth. She hadn't expected to feel nervous, but she did. There were still pieces of her from before that held some fear, some hesitation. She had written this novel, put it out into the world, but sharing her personal history, her real self, was different. Tonight, it was the world's turn to know the girl who had once been shattered, the woman who had rebuilt herself piece by piece. The lights dimmed slightly and the crowd quieted. Claire took the microphone in her hand, her fingers warm against its cold metal surface. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady, though she could feel the weight of everything she was about to say. "I know most of you know me as the graphic novelist who paints violent worlds and dark characters. But tonight I'm here to share something different. A story that's mine. The Wolf at the Table isn't just a comic. It's a piece of me. The parts of me that I thought were broken but weren't. The parts that make me whole." She paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the words settle into the air. "I know a lot of you have wondered why I never spoke about my past, about where the darkness in my work came from. The truth is I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to talk about the things that had been buried inside me for so long." The audience was still waiting. She could feel their attention, but it didn't feel overwhelming now. It felt like she was finally sharing something they could understand. "But I've learned," she continued, "that we all have a past. We all carry pieces of ourselves that we'd rather forget. But we don't need to run from those pieces. I didn't. Instead, I've embraced them. Because those fragments, those broken pieces, they make us who we are. And the cracks, they let the light in." The crowd was silent for a moment longer. Then a slow, appreciative round of applause began, building gradually until it filled the room. Claire stood there, feeling it wash over her. This wasn't about validation, not really. It was a quiet acknowledgement. She was seen. She was heard. A few days after the launch, Claire sat at her desk again, her fingers resting on the edge of her desk. There was no nervous energy this time, just the quiet comfort of knowing that she was where she was meant to be. Her phone buzzed on the corner of the desk, breaking the silence. Claire picked it up, glancing at the notification. It was from Dr. Weiss. "I wanted to let you know that I've received a new patient. She's a young girl around the same age you were when we first met. She's drawing wolves, Claire. I thought you might like to know that. Claire smiled, a soft, knowing smile. The cycle had started again as it always would. But this time Claire knew that the world had the tools to heal. That little girl drawing wolves would one day find her own path. And just like Claire, she would learn that the wolves weren't the enemy. They were the survivors. They were the protectors. And the light would come in through the cracks. Claire closed her eyes, letting the feeling of peace settle in her chest. The woman who had once been a frightened girl was now a woman who had found her own strength, who had remembered everything and come out stronger on the other side. She was no longer broken. She was whole. And the world would know her for it.
For the ones who remember. For the ones who survived. Her story is finished. But yours continues. Subscribe to follow where the next shadow leads.